I'd like to invite you to open your Bibles to the book of Esther and find the first chapter and the 9th verse. Esther chapter 1 and verse 9, page 776 in our Pew Bibles. So we'll read from there close to the beginning here, and then we'll read some more from chapter 2 of the same book. Esther chapter 1 and verse 9. I'll tell you a story that was purported to happen at a cafeteria of a Christian college. I first heard this story from my mother. It was a joke, actually. It may be the only joke I remember my mother ever telling. I since have heard it about other Christian college cafeterias. I've heard it about other places that had nothing to do with being Christian or unchristian. So I don't know where it originated. I'm just going to go with my mom's version, okay? You may have heard this before. It's Christian college cafeteria. They're going through the line. The good old days when you went with your tray and they handed you didn't get the pick. You just got what they were. There was a big bowl of apples, beautiful red apples, and they go through and they put a sign up. Please take only one. And then they put, remember, God is watching. Down at the other end of the line was pie. And somebody put a handwritten sign that said, take all the pie you want. God is watching the apples. In the book of Esther, we see God, who is not mentioned, against a godless backdrop. And what we learn is he's watching, even if no one says it. He's watching even if no one thinks it. And he's watching whether or not anybody writes a sign about it. So let's talk a little bit about context. It takes place in the ancient kingdom of Persia. It takes place after the Israelites were exiled. Some of them had returned, but they're exiled still in Persia. And the king's name is Xerxes, right? Xerxes. And he is at the pinnacle of his power, right? He's at the pinnacle of the power of the world, really. He's a world ruler, world leader. And he decides to take a 6-month period of time and just display how great he is and how great his kingdom is. And at the end of that 6 months' time, he has a banquet, right? Throws a feast for 7 days. And one of the aspects of this feast is he brings in his rulers, his nobles, everybody who's under him, and he feeds them. And it's a drink all you want affair, right? You can just have all you want. The people who are responsible to serve, you just give everybody whatever they want. Let's pick it up in verse 9. So the king's throwing this banquet. Verse 9 says, Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes, right? So you got the king's banquet, and now you got the queen's banquet. And you start to get the idea that there might just be a little tension here. Verse 10. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was high in spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, and I won't worry about their names, verse 11, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. And the king became furious, and he burned with anger. She refuses the king's command. What does she do? She publicly shames him. Right? She publicly disgraces him. Vashti, I want you to come. Nope, not happening. You go tell the king, I'm not doing it. Well, the king, the text says, right, he's furious. Right? His rage is burning inside. And it probably didn't help that he was drunk. So what does he do? Well, without reading this chapter, he gathers his consultants, right? What do you do when you don't know what to do? You get a committee together. That's what he does. Brings this group of people, and he says, hey, what do we do about this? And they're like, well, she wronged you, She wronged us, the nobles. Matter of fact, she actually wronged everybody, all the people in the kingdom. And when word gets out about this, king, here's what's going to happen. All the other wives will not listen to their husbands. They'll think, we don't have to listen either. They're going to say, the queen didn't have to listen, so we don't have to listen. And you know what that's going to do, king? That's going to make us a kingdom where every wife has contempt for her husband and all the husbands are angry. In short, they say the kingdom's going to be a mess. And so their solution is to do what? Get rid of Vashti. Get rid of her. Put somebody else in her place. Find somebody else. And you do that, then the men in the kingdom will be respected. Pretty much what you would think an inebriated committee of men would come up with. And so what does Xerxes do? He issues a decree. And the decree is this: each man is the ruler of his own household. And the irony is that was already the case in this kingdom. That's what they do. Here's this decision by this group of people. It is total secular wisdom. Regardless of whether it comes from intoxication or not, it is total secular wisdom. It is complete fear, and it is complete anger. No precedent for it, no principle, no book to appeal to, no law of the land, nothing like that at all. Forget even any appeal to what God might think. Here's a group of people. They get together, and this is the wisdom they employ. And this decision, right, at their level and the way they went about it, this decision opens a place, opens a spot before it's needed. Before that open spot is ever needed, these guys get together and they make it happen. Nobody could have envisioned at this meeting, from this decree, nobody could envision what this was going to mean for the future. What it was going to mean for the future of God's people. Nobody could fathom except God. Right? God's way ahead of the curve. And here this group of people operating on their own, and they do not see, and they could not see, and nobody else could see how this would work out quite well as far as God is concerned. So on the human level, what do you have? You have a wife who's had enough of her drunk husband and his friends. She just had enough. I'm not doing it. And in their rash act, in her rash choice, unleashes another rash act of a decree, and all the while, we find out down the road, God is watching. Doesn't feel like it at the moment. Okay, you remember that. Doesn't feel like it at the moment. Well, what's going on at the citadel? What's going on at the palace? Maybe a lot of people in the kingdom of Persia don't care, and a lot of people in the world don't care. But I'll tell you what, God knows what's going on there. And God knows this will open a door that will work quite fine for what he wants to do in the future of his people. So you have godless actions, right? Just outright godless actions, godless choices, godless decisions that are not greater than God. You say, well, Pastor, we believe that. Of course they're not greater. Yeah, we believe that until somebody makes a godless act and choice that affects our life. And then all of a sudden we're like, what's going to happen? You see, when it's in Persia, and it's, 2,500 years ago, it's pretty easy to sit and dissect it theologically. But what happens in your world, right? When somebody makes a godless act and a godless choice and it affects you, all of a sudden we're not as quick to say, well, this is not greater than God. But here it is. God will actually work with and despite this decision. Okay? Let's not think that God is necessarily for this or against it. Right? He's going to work with it and despite the decision. So you got the king and you got the queen, you got these nobles, and they're all doing their thing at this level. right? They're all doing their godless living and life at this level. And yet God is over this, right? He's over time. And he's sovereign, right? And he's working at a whole nother level. And this is how it is in Persia. And this is how it is in your life and in my life. Right? Godless people do not have the last word in this world and in our life. They don't. Somebody can make the worst decision for the worst reasons out of the most godless background. And that can trickle down into our life, and it can cost us. But it is not undoing the promises and the purposes of God. We get to chapter 2. Okay? Same book, chapter 2. And this king, right, after Vashti has been deposed and gotten rid of, he comes to his senses. Right? He sobers up and he calms down. And when that happens, the chapter tells us his attendants, right? The people who take care of him, and they're around the palace and they see him day in and day out. His attendants have an idea. Their idea is, hey, let's do that. Why don't we go throughout the kingdom, let's round up all the beautiful unmarried women, let's clean them up. That's what they do. They clean them up. Let's get them all together. Let's give them beauty treatments. That's literally what the text says. And whoever catches the king's eye, she'll be queen. We'll get her into the spot of that Vashti used to have. What a standard. What a standard, huh? Again, total secular, selfish wisdom. It's image-driven. It's all image-driven, and it's a beauty pageant, right? And the winner doesn't get a sash. She gets to be queen with a guy who likes to throw banquets and get people boozed up. Wonderful, wonderful. Here is a decision that started to rebel against a king, that led to a decision to remove that person, that now leads to a decision to replace that person. And so you've got these decisions swirling around in the kingdom of Persia at various levels. You got the king doing it, you got his nobles doing it, you got the king's attendants doing it, right? Who gives them the authority to carry all this out? They're swirling ideas and plans with no consideration for what's true, right? No consideration for ethics, no consideration for morals, no consideration for godliness, righteousness, no consideration, does this person have any qualifications other than their looks? You might want that in a queen. But this all swirls around, and it starts to domino, right? This book unfolds more like a novel than a dissertation on doctrine. But we're supposed to see in the lines what is happening. And these decisions, right, they start to domino. You know what I mean? One domino hits another, and eventually something happens way down there, right? The match gets lit, or the marble falls off, or one domino, seemingly insignificant, but it leads somewhere. Where is this going? Well, on the human level, here's a group of people, they want it to go for the king, and they want to have a queen. They want to have a queen that's beautiful. So let's just round them up and see what we can come up with. And they're trying to achieve something down here to serve their own end and their own purposes. But where is this going to go with God and with God's view? God is going to use all of this scheming, and he is going to work through it, and somebody is going to be chosen. And that somebody who is going to be chosen will be in the right place at the right time with the right influence and will literally save lives. Other lives are going to be lost, but will save people's life. Look in chapter 2, verse 5. It says, "There was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shammai, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiakim, king of Judah." So here again is somebody else's action, somebody else's decision back, right? This other king, right, Nebuchadnezzar, and this leads to this guy being in this place at this time. Verse 7, "Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. The girl, who was also known as Esther, was lovely in form and features, and Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Haggai. Esther was also taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem." Verse 9, "The girl pleased him and won his favor," that is, she pleased Haggai. "Immediately he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned her to 7 maids selected from the king's palace and moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem." So now we find out that this guy Mordecai, he's in the citadel, right? He's in the capital, the place where the king lives. He's in the capital city, and he's inside this citadel, is a fortified, protected, walled city. Why is an exiled Jew from Israel in the citadel? Why is he there? Well, we're not told, right? Esther gets taken among the roundup, right? You get the feeling these ladies are herded like cattle. Excuse me, my nose is running because yesterday I poked myself in the eye and my eye's watering. Yeah, talk about domino effect. Anyway, Esther is taken, right? In the roundup, she's taken. Well, whose idea was it to take her? Did Mordecai offer her? Does Esther want to go? Does Esther have to go? We're not told. Farther down in this chapter, Esther does not reveal her background. She does not reveal she's Jewish because her father said, don't do it. He forbid her. Esther, don't tell anybody that you're Jewish. Why? Look, verses 10 and 11. Let's read it. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. So we find out Mordecai's not just there. He is very familiar with what is there. He's very familiar with where this harem is, and he has freedom to roam around. She's silent. Mordecai has charged her to be silent. Why? Is there some direction from God? If there is, it's not mentioned. Is this deceit? Is this control? Is it fear? Right? Are they afraid to say? Are they trying to manipulate a situation? Mordecai's pacing back and forth. Well, if God's so sovereign and God's so in control, and if he's got a working plan here, why is he so worried? If he trusts God, and if God is in this. You see, we're not told the answer to any of these questions. Why are these people doing this? We know what's going on with the king, right? We know why he does what he does and his guys. But now you got people that seem to be on the other side, in the opposing side of godlessness. And we don't have any inkling what's going on with them. We are not told. And so now, we're not just at the realm of decisions, we're at the realm of motive. Why do people do what they do? I'm sure you've asked yourself that question more than once. Explaining why the Persians operate the way the Persians do is relatively easy. But here's Mordecai, and here is Mordecai and Esther, and they are presented as acting and making choices no different than the Persians. Something that is interesting about this book is it's hard to figure out just how godly are Mordecai and Esther. Or are they just as godless as the Persians? God's faithful, God's sovereign, but what are these two up to? No mention of God whatsoever. They're presented as making decisions, taking actions no differently than Persians. The point is this: the motives behind godless actions, the motives behind godless decisions, doesn't matter to the sovereign God. Why somebody's doing something doesn't matter to him and to his sovereign purpose. You can do something for all the right reasons, you can do something for all the wrong reasons. And those are not causing God to rise and fall. Are they responsible, right? The people in this book and in our world who make godless decisions and choices for all the wrong motives, are they personally responsible? Yes. That intent of those kinds of decisions and the goals and the outcomes, they may be felt by us, but God's presence, right? His presence among us, his purposes will be fulfilled despite the most evil of motives. So on one hand, it doesn't matter what's behind what these folks are doing, regardless on which side of the spectrum they are from godly to ungodly. What matters is God is over all of this, and even the most evil of motives. Right? God is so sovereign, he can accomplish what he wants to do. Just remember the cross of Jesus Christ. Just remember the people who are scheming in the background. They're trying to pull something off. What they want to do is they want to take this man's life. And they're happy when they can get it done. And in those evil intents of the human heart, God is at the cross. And he's redeeming the world. Right? So when we read this book, we got lots of questions about people. Right? But we have a lot of great conclusions about God. Right? He's bigger than all of this. It means he's bigger than all of this when it happens in Persia, and he's bigger than all of this when it happens here. And you may have been on the receiving side, right, of some people who have done some things, and whether it was proven or unproven, you're pretty sure their motive was not good. May even been an intent of evil toward you. And when that happens, right, it is so easy to start to question God and question God's plan. And, does he care? Does he see? Right? Is he watching the apples and he's not watching me? I would remind you that very phrase got used by an individual, and I'll tell you what that phrase is in a moment. The very phrase gets used by an individual in the book of Genesis by the name of Joseph, who was on the receiving end of the evil intent of people. And when he finally, when the curtain finally gets drawn up, and we see where God has been against this godless backdrop, Joseph is able to say to the very group of people who intended for evil for him, you intended it for evil. Right? But God was in it for good. So this book is almost another illustration of the same God of Joseph and the roller coaster of his life. Almost. So we remember the cross. We remember God's record. And we see it here in a book where he is not mentioned, in a place where people think he isn't. But there he is. He's there. And he's here. And he's over your life. Okay? You remember, you are not subject to the godless decisions and the godless motives that are at work in this world. And the New Testament puts it this way. John says, greater is the one who is in us. Right? Greater is Christ in us than the one who is in the world. He's talking about Satan. Right? The work of Satan, the prince of the power of the air, right? Trying to take this world to a history of condemnation and ruin and defeat everything that God is doing. Trying to take down the cross. John says you need to remember, the one that's in you, he's greater. He's greater than the one that's in the world. There is no contest. Right? There's no contest. He's greater. It's just a matter of time until it all unfolds. So here in this book, we see these people carrying on, making their decisions as if God doesn't matter, and God isn't mentioned in the book, and on it goes. And where it's going to go is this is going to come back to haunt some of these folks, because they have not thought nor cared about who God is and where he's at. But we're going to see him here. Please remember, in the world in which we live, it is so easy to look around and think, there is more evil than good. There is more godlessness than godliness. And you can even start to get almost a complex, right? Like an Elijah complex. I'm the only one left. Right? God, there's nobody. Time out. God says to Elijah, I got 7,000, Elijah. They haven't bowed the knee to Baal. Right? God is at work in this world. And if he's not mentioned, if he's not credited, and if he's not consulted, that doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what people's motives are and what they do to you. They are not greater than God's power and sovereignty in your life. Let's pray.